the one Buddhist thought that destroys anxiety, even after 60. Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without the Buddha. In a world that constantly demands our attention, anxiety often feels like a shadow we can never quite escape. But what if the problem isn't the shadow? It's our refusal to stop running from it. Buddhism teaches that true peace is not the absence of problems, but the quiet understanding that everything, even fear, can become a teacher. As you listen today, allow yourself to question the way you've been taught to fight your mind. What if calmness isn't something to achieve, but something to remember? Share your reflections in the comments. When was the last time you found peace in the middle of chaos? 1. Anxiety as a teacher, not an enemy. Anxiety is not an enemy to be fought, but a teacher to be understood. In the eyes of Buddhism, it is never a punishment or a personal flaw. It is a form of inner intelligence, a messenger that points to where the soul is still asleep. When mindfulness deepens, we begin to see that every discomfort has a direction. Anxiety is not chaos. It is the movement of life's energy, calling us to return to ourselves. The moment we resist it, we suffer. The moment we listen, it begins to teach. It shows us the hidden attachments that rule our lives, the need to control, to be certain, to be liked, to be safe. It mirrors the clinging mind, the part of us that cannot accept the impermanence of all things. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment, and anxiety is one of its purest expressions. Every anxious thought is a strand of desire tangled around something that doesn't want to stay. When we stop running from it and instead observe it with awareness, anxiety reveals its true purpose, to guide us back to the present moment, where peace already exists. In this space of mindfulness, the energy of anxiety begins to dissolve. It no longer dominates, it transforms. We realize that anxiety is simply the vibration of energy that has lost its rhythm. Like a wave searching for its ocean, it seeks balance. The more we observe it without judgment, the more it softens into understanding. This is not suppression, but transformation alchemy of the mind. Fear turns into clarity, confusion into awareness. What once felt unbearable becomes the very tool of awakening. Buddhism teaches that the path to liberation is not in avoiding the storm, but in learning to stay still within it. Anxiety becomes a sacred opportunity, a mirror reflecting the gap between who we are and who we think we should be. When we look closely, we see that anxiety only exists between the past and the future, in the narrow space where the mind refuses to rest. But in the present moment, the heart is untouched. The now is free from anxiety because it holds no narrative, no anticipation, only being. Through mindfulness, we stop asking, "How can I get rid of this feeling?" and begin to ask, "What is this feeling trying to show me?" This shift in perception destroys anxiety not by force, but by illumination. The more light of awareness we bring, the less shadow there is to fear. Anxiety loses its meaning when we stop identifying with it. It is not who we are. It is a temporary movement within the vast field of consciousness. When we understand this, we no longer drown in it. We float above it, carried by the same current that once pulled us under. Anxiety, then, becomes the silent teacher that pushes us toward awakening. It reveals that peace is not the absence of noise, but the mastery of stillness within it. It reminds us that true freedom is not found in changing our circumstances, but in transforming our relationship with them. And as the Buddha said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Through mindfulness and awareness, we discover that every anxious breath is not a curse, but a path, one that leads us back to the truth of who we are. Spacious, aware, and unshaken. If this message has touched your heart, leave a comment of faith. I welcome anxiety as my teacher. 2. The root of anxiety: attachment and aversion. According to Buddhist wisdom, anxiety is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that you are resisting the flow of life. It is born from two silent forces that pull the human mind apart: attachment and aversion. You cling to what you love, fearing its loss, and you push away what you dislike, fearing its arrival. Between these two movements, your mind becomes restless, caught between craving and rejection, wanting life to obey your desires. The more you struggle to hold on or to push away, the tighter the knots of anxiety grow around your heart. You begin to believe that peace can be achieved through control, that if you could just fix everything, everyone, and every moment, you would finally rest. But life refuses to be controlled. It moves, shifts, and changes like the ocean. The Buddha taught that suffering begins when we demand permanence from what is impermanent. Meditation is the antidote to this illusion. It trains the mind to sit still amid the storm, to see that thoughts, emotions, and sensations are not enemies, but visitors. Each one arises, lingers, and fades. None are yours to possess. When you meditate, you begin to notice that even anxiety itself is just a passing ripple on the surface of consciousness. It does not define you. It moves through you. The secret is not to silence your thoughts, but to change your relationship with them. When you stop believing that every thought must be true or every feeling must be fixed, space opens within you. In that space, peace naturally emerges, not because the world changed, but because your perception did. Anxiety feeds on resistance. The more you say, "This shouldn't be happening," the more power you give it. Yet Buddhist wisdom reveals a paradox. When you stop running from anxiety and instead turn toward it with awareness, it begins to lose its grip. You start to see that it's not the situation, but your reaction that creates the storm. You fear uncertainty because you want control. You fear loss because you believe happiness depends on possession. But all along, it was your grasping that created the pain. When you finally let go, when you allow life to unfold without trying to edit it, calmness enters like light into a dark room. Everything in this universe moves through the law of impermanence. Every breath, every relationship, every thought is changing, dissolving, transforming. Peace does not mean the absence of change. It means the acceptance of it. Through meditation, you begin to observe rather than interfere, to witness rather than manipulate. You no longer ask life to be easy. You ask it to be real. In that acceptance, your heart softens, your fear lessens, and you discover that what you were running from was never the world. It was your own mind demanding that things stay the same. The practice is simple. Stop clinging. Stop resisting. Start observing. When you do, anxiety transforms into insight. Tension turns into awareness. And every breath becomes a reminder that life, in its fleeting beauty, is not something to be controlled, but something to be experienced. This is the heart of Buddhist wisdom, the art of letting reality flow through you without struggle, without resistance, and without fear. 3. The liberating thought. This, too, is just a thought. Anxiety begins as a spark, a fleeting thought that disguises itself as absolute truth. It whispers, "Something is wrong," and before long, that whisper grows into a wildfire. The mind begins to believe its own stories, spinning endless tales of what could go wrong. But Buddhism offers a liberating realization. This too is just a thought. It's a quiet reminder that not everything the mind says deserves belief. The moment you recognize a thought as merely a thought, fear begins to lose its authority. You no longer fight with your mind. You see through its illusion. As the Buddha taught, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind can be both your prison and your path to freedom, depending on whether you choose to identify with every passing idea or to simply watch it drift away. Picture your mind as an open sky, vast, infinite, and serene. Thoughts are nothing more than clouds passing through, sometimes heavy with rain, sometimes light as mist. Yet no cloud can stain the sky itself. You are that sky. You are not the anxious storm. You are the stillness behind it. When you whisper to yourself, "This too is just a thought," you remind your spirit of its timeless nature. The fear loses form because you stop feeding it your energy. This gentle awareness becomes a kind of spiritual healing, an alchemy of energy where the weight of emotion transforms into lightness of understanding. What once felt like chaos becomes clarity. You begin to sense that beneath all noise, your essence is unshaken, luminous, eternal. Anxiety thrives on belief. It survives only when you mistake imagination for truth. The mind shows you images of loss or failure, and your body reacts as if those scenes are unfolding right now. Yet mindfulness, the heart of Buddhist spirituality, invites you to pause and truly see. When you observe the rise and fall of each thought without resistance, its energy softens. You notice that a thought is simply movement vibration, appearing and disappearing within awareness. You are the witness, not the prisoner. The more you observe, the more distance grows between you and your thoughts. And within that space, peace naturally blooms. Imagine each thought as a guest knocking at your door. Some arrive politely. Some carry the energy of fear or anger. You can greet them without letting them in. You can simply say, "I see you," and let them pass. This is the power of awareness. It frees you from attachment. You begin to understand that your suffering doesn't come from the thought itself, but from believing it defines who you are. The moment you choose not to identify with every mental story, healing begins. You are not your fear, not your past, not the noise in your head. You are consciousness itself, the observer who watches energy flow through the body, rise, dissolve, and return to stillness. When you stop trying to silence your thoughts and instead meet them with curiosity, something profound happens. They lose control. Like fire exposed to air, fear burns itself out under the light of awareness. You realize that peace doesn't come from fixing the mind, but from understanding it. Every anxious thought becomes an opportunity for a doorway into existence. You begin to live with softness instead of struggle, with compassion instead of resistance. And in that subtle shift, anxiety transforms into insight. Chaos becomes clarity, and the storm turns into silence. What remains is awareness spacious, alive, and free of the true expression of spirituality and the deepest form of healing. If this teaching has brought you a sense of peace, share it with me in the comments below by writing, "This too is just a thought." By doing so, you're not only reminding yourself of the truth that no thought can control you, but also helping others realize the same freedom. Let's build a space where calm becomes our natural state, and every anxious wave turns into wisdom. 4. Mindfulness as the anchor. Mindfulness is not just a practice, it is the act of remembering who you truly are beneath the noise. In the teachings of Buddhism, it is said that peace is never something to be found, it is something to be remembered. Every time you lose yourself in the anxious waves of thought, in the endless what-ifs of tomorrow, or if only of yesterday, you are leaving the sacred ground of the present moment. Mindfulness is what brings you back home to your breath, to your body, to the stillness that has never abandoned you. When you close your eyes and follow the rhythm of your breath, you begin to notice the space between thoughts, the silence beneath every sound. That silence is your true self, the unshaken core beneath every storm. Buddhism teaches that mindfulness is not about escaping reality, but embracing it with complete awareness. Anxiety thrives in resistance. It feeds on our need to control, to predict, to understand everything that has not yet happened. But the moment you return to the present, the illusion begins to dissolve. You start to see that the future has no real existence. It is merely a projection of fear. The breath becomes your anchor in this ocean of uncertainty. Each inhale gathers your scattered energy. Each exhale releases what was never yours to carry. Through this gentle rhythm, you begin to sense that calm is not something you must create. It is what remains when the mind stops fighting life. The Buddha once compared the mind to a restless monkey, constantly jumping from branch to branch. Mindfulness is the gentle hand that teaches this monkey to rest. You do not silence it through force. You calm it through compassion. When you observe your thoughts instead of becoming them, a subtle shift happens. You stop identifying with the noise and begin to experience yourself as the awareness behind it. This is the essence of awakening. You are not your anxiety. You are the vast sky in which anxiety appears and disappears. The clouds may come, the thunder may sound, but the sky itself remains untouched. Through mindfulness, you start to sense the energy vibration within your body. Fear has a certain frequency it contracts and tightens. Awareness, on the other hand, expands and softens. By bringing consciousness into your breath, you shift your vibration from resistance to harmony. This is the alchemy of the mind. Buddhism calls it liberation, not because the world changes, but because your relationship with it transforms. You stop clinging to the illusion of control, and instead, you begin to flow with the impermanence of life. Anxiety loses its grip the moment you stop running from it. When you meet it with awareness, you see that it has no solid core, only thoughts feeding thoughts. The present moment, when fully felt, becomes a field of healing energy. You realize that the now is not small or fleeting. It is infinite. It contains everything. When you return to it, you touch eternity itself. This is mindfulness. To breathe in fully, to feel life moving through you, to rest in the knowing that you are safe here, now. The mind may whisper storms of fear, but beneath it all, there is a still sea, and you are that sea. 5. Compassion as healing. Anxiety is not a monster waiting outside of you. It is the quiet cry of the heart that has forgotten how to be kind to itself. Buddhist wisdom reveals that the cure is not found in fighting anxiety, but in softening toward it. Through meditation, you begin to see that every anxious thought is a child knocking at the door of your awareness, asking not for logic, but for love. The mind that constantly scolds itself, "You should be better. You're not enough. You failed again," is a mind that has not yet learned the language of compassion. But when you bring gentleness into that inner dialogue, when you breathe and whisper to yourself, "It's okay to feel this," the heavy armor of self-judgment begins to crack, and light seeps through the wounds you once hid. Compassion is not weakness. It is the most radical form of strength. The Buddha taught that loving kindness must begin with the self, for one cannot pour peace into the world from an empty vessel. When you treat your anxiety as you would comfort a frightened child, patiently, tenderly, without forcing it to disappear, you realize that healing does not come from control, but from understanding. Anxiety stops being a punishment and becomes a messenger, revealing where you have abandoned yourself. The pain that once felt unbearable turns into a sacred doorway, guiding you back to your own presence. This is the quiet revolution of meditation: to sit with what hurts, to breathe through the chaos, to remember that you are the sky, not the storm. Our culture tells us to suppress our emotions, to stay strong, to keep smiling even when our hearts are breaking. But Buddhist wisdom turns this illusion inside out. It says, strength is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the courage to stay open in the middle of fear. When you close your eyes and observe your mind without judgment, you begin to see that anxiety is not an enemy to conquer, but an energy longing to be understood. The practice of meditation allows you to witness your thoughts like waves rising and falling in an endless ocean, sometimes restless, sometimes calm, but never permanent. And in that witnessing, a miracle happens. The waves lose their power to drown you. Each breath becomes an act of love. Each moment of awareness a small liberation. You realize that healing is not about silencing the mind, but about listening deeply to what it's trying to say. The self that once lived in constant fear begins to breathe in peace. The very thing that once imprisoned you, your anxiety now, becomes the teacher that leads you to freedom. You see that the heart's true nature is not to resist pain, but to embrace it with compassion until even suffering transforms into wisdom. Meditation, then, is not an escape from life. It is a return to the raw, unfiltered truth of being human, where tenderness and strength meet. And in that meeting, anxiety loses its edge, and what remains is an unshakable serenity born from the gentleness of your own understanding. If this message touched your heart, comment below. I choose compassion over fear. Let's fill this space with kindness and awareness. Subscribe to Dharma Pulse to keep learning how Buddhist wisdom can heal the mind and free the heart. 6. The ultimate thought. This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am. This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am. These words carry the power to dissolve the walls of suffering we've built within ourselves. When you truly understand this, anxiety loses its anchor. It's not that the feeling disappears. It's that you stop mistaking it for yourself. In Buddhism, this truth is called anatta, or non-self, the realization that the I you protect, defend, and constantly feed with stories is just a temporary ripple in the boundless ocean of awareness. You are not the ripple. You are the ocean itself, vast, silent, and untouchable. Anxiety is only a wave that rises and falls, yet you've spent your whole life calling it me. The moment you stop doing that, healing begins. When you say, "This is not mine," you detach from possession. You no longer treat your fear like property. You stop polishing your wounds as if they define your worth. When you say, "This is not me," you unchain yourself from identity. The emotion may still exist, but it no longer owns your consciousness. And when you say, "This is not who I am," you awaken to the deeper truth. You are the awareness watching the storm, not the one being destroyed by it. The Buddha once said, "Nothing is to be clung to as I or mine." This is the essence of spiritual freedom. It's not about escaping life. It's about seeing through the illusion that you are separate from it. Think of your mind as a vast, open sky and anxiety as a passing cloud. The cloud might darken the horizon for a while, but it can never stain the sky. Your true nature remains untouched. When you identify with the cloud, you shrink your entire existence into that single moment of darkness. But when you identify with the sky, you regain your infinite expanse. This is spirituality in its purest form, the art of remembering that you are not the voice in your head, but the awareness listening to it. Healing happens when energy begins to flow freely again. When you stop fighting what you feel and start witnessing it with compassion. Society teaches you to fix, numb, or suppress your pain, but the Buddha teaches you to sit with it, to let it dissolve under the light of awareness. As Thich Nhat Hanh said, "Smile, breathe, and go slowly." The one who smiles is not the anxious mind. It is the silent witness behind it, the eternal observer untouched by the chaos. When you breathe with awareness, your energy reorganizes itself. Anxiety softens into understanding, and fear turns into freedom. Anxiety is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It reveals where you are still clinging, where you still mistake temporary sensations for permanent truth. Each time you repeat this mantra, "This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am," you peel away another layer of illusion. Slowly, the mind loosens its grip, and the heart remembers its stillness. Spirituality is not an escape from reality. It is a deeper encounter with it. Healing is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering that who you truly are has never been broken. And when you finally stop identifying with the storm, you discover the calm that has always been waiting beneath the noise. The peace that no thought, no fear, no anxiety can ever take away. 7. Living the teaching daily. The essence of Buddhist mindfulness lies in remembering that nothing truly belongs to us, not even our thoughts, not even our fears. The practice is not about escaping the world, but awakening within it. In the stillness of sleepless nights, or in the quiet rhythm of early mornings, you begin to notice how the mind reaches for things that were never meant to be held. When anxiety rises like smoke from an unseen fire, pause and breathe deeply. Whisper within yourself, "This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am." In that instant, you reclaim your freedom. You stop identifying with the noise of your mind and return to the silent awareness that is always watched from behind your eyes. This is where the teaching becomes alive, not in sacred texts, but in the trembling moments when you choose presence over panic. Each time you remember these words, you shift the vibration of your being. The energy that once fed anxiety now becomes the energy of awakening. Your breath transforms into a bridge between illusion and truth, between reaction and realization. Buddhism teaches that the self we defend so fiercely is an echo, not a solid form. And mindfulness is the art of watching that echo fade. When you no longer cling to what arises in the mind, you begin to experience life as it is raw, impermanent, alive. The heart learns to rest, not because the storm has ended, but because it understands the storm was never personal. Living this truth daily is the real meditation. It happens when you wash your hands and feel the water touch your skin. When you look at the sky and stop demanding it to be blue. Every act becomes sacred because you are fully there, not lost in memories, not drowning in expectations, but aware. The old habits of worry lose their power because you no longer feed them with identification. Each repetition of "this is not mine" cuts one more thread of attachment. Each breath, whispered with awareness, brings you closer to your original state, whole, untouchable, vast as the sky. Buddhism does not promise a life without suffering. It offers the wisdom to see suffering clearly and not mistake it for yourself. When you breathe through your anxiety without rejecting it, you are no longer the victim of emotion, but the observer of energy. In that awareness, something miraculous happens. The heart softens, the mind clears, and life flows again. You begin to move, not from fear, but from understanding, not from resistance, but from rhythm. This is how peace emerges quietly, naturally, not as an achievement, but as a remembrance of what you've always been. To embody this teaching, you must bring it into the small moments of your day. How you breathe, how you speak, how you respond to what arises. Let this truth live through you. Comment below, "I live the teaching," to affirm your commitment to mindfulness in action and remind others that wisdom is not learned once it is practiced daily. When we finally understand that anxiety is not our enemy but a messenger, we begin to see that every restless thought and every trembling breath is just the mind's way of asking for awareness. Buddhism teaches that peace is not something to be achieved. It's what remains when we stop clinging to control, to outcomes, to the illusion of permanence. So as you return to your daily life, breathe deeply, observe without judgment, and remember that stillness is always within reach beneath the noise, beyond the fear. Tell me in the comments, what helps you return to peace when anxiety visits? Let's walk this mindful path together. Subscribe to Dharma Pulse and share your reflections below, so others may find their calm through you.